Chapter 68, Space Areas. This chapter is updated by Novels.pl. With his unremitting efforts, he expanded internal space of spatial ring to 12 cubic meters. Finally, the space became as big as a small house. The surface of the ring glistened and the internal space quickly turned into a separate space. With my current cultivation, the biggest internal space I can make is 12 cubic meters. 12 cubic meters was not that big, but it was enough for a regular warrior. When his cultivation improved, he could refine a ring with a bigger internal space in the future. To carve the inscription was just the first step. The next step was refining the ring. The reason why Yuo Chen bought a weapon refining stove, which could refine genuine martial arms of the 7th stage from King Xuan Pavilion, was that he could refine a spatial ring. Under the refining fire, the internal space of the ring would stabilize, making the ring genuine martial arms. He put the ring in the stove and lit fire nature spiritual crystal under. Driven by Yuo Chen's genuine chi, the crystal began to burn. Zhang Yuochen needed only to control the strength of the fire, when the crystal was burning. When the stove needed stronger fire, he poured his genuine chi into the crystal, making the fire larger. He sat by the stove with his legs crossed and summoned the sacred prime tree painting floating on Chi Lake. Placing it in front of him, he stretched one hand over the painting and injected genuine chi in it to summon Blackie. A dark light flashed and a giant black cat appeared in front of him. Blackie had a rounded body with a raised tail. His eyes were like two round black crystals. Blackie asked, "Young man, have you learned all 8 basic inscriptions of space?" Zhang Yuochen nodded. "Yes, but I feel like there's something lacking in the ring." Blackie said, "A spatial ring is just a basic treasure of space. But the ring you refined is the basic ring of the basic treasure." Zhang Yuochen asked, "What do you mean?" Blackie answered, "The ring you refined lacks master verifying inscription. Once you lose your ring, anyone can open it and take your treasures from it." Zhang Yuochen nodded. "What else?" Blackie said, "The spatial ring refined by Saint Monk Xumi can store not only treasures but also have the power to attack and defend." Zhang Yuochen's eyes were gleaming. "Can I carve inscriptions of attack and defense on the spatial ring?" "Of course," Blackie continued, "if you have high attainments in the inscription, you can carve inscription of anonymity on your ring. That way, people can't see your ring and they won't covet it." He added, "But both master verifying inscription and inscription of anonymity are medium-level inscriptions. They're so complicated that you can only carve them after your spiritual power has reached level 30. Even if when you reached that level, you must learn and practice a lot before you can carve them. After all, inscription of space is harder than other inscriptions." Zhang Yuochen turned the mystery of time and space to page 4 where the 16 kinds of medium-level inscriptions of space were recorded. Master verifying inscription and inscription of anonymity were among them. In addition, there was inscription of aggression and inscription of defense. The easiest medium-level inscription was master verifying inscription. It was, however, still much harder than inscription of strain type and inscription of condensing. It would not be easy for Zhang Yuochen to carve master verifying inscription with his current cultivation. "My spiritual power has reached the level required for carving medium-level inscriptions. If I work hard, I can carve master verifying inscription." Zhang Yuochen carefully examined master verifying inscription and kept it in his mind. Then he practiced on the spiritual paper. About an hour later, the weapon refining stove emitted an odd noise. He did it. Zhang Yuochen was impatient to take out the ring out of the stove. He placed it in his hand and stared at it happily. A spatial ring with an internal space of 1 cubic meter is valued at 100,000 silver coins. This one has 10 times that internal space. How much will it worth? Zhang Yuochen did not sell the ring at once, as he did not lack money. He decided to deal with it later. Now that he had succeeded once, he would be able to refine more spatial rings. The entrance exam of the School of the Martial Market is in a month. I should try reaching a higher level. It was very difficult for him to reach mid-stage of Black Realm from initial stage in just a month. If so, he decided to start to practice space domain. Zhang Yuochen turned the mystery of time and space to page 3. He devoted himself to studying space domain. As for space domain, it utilized soul of space. Using oneself as the center, one could create a separate martial arts space. Zhang Yuochen pulled all strings in space domain, for he was its master. His combat effectiveness would triple once he succeeded. At the very least, Zhang Yuochen should have only been able to practice space domain once he reached Heaven Realm. But his soul was a warrior of Heaven Realm and he opened up Vessel of Spirit, which meant he can practice space domain in advance. Time flew quickly. A month outside the time and space spine equaled 3 months inside. For 3 months, Zhang Yuochen practiced space domain. He succeeded at the night before he was supposed to leave the palace space area. Zhang Yuochen sat with his legs crossed in the room. He triggered his martial soul with Vessel of Spirit to make it float behind him. The martial soul uses spiritual chi of the heaven and earth to converge into a space power. With Zhang Yuochen on the center, it created a sphere with a radius of 10 meters. That was his space domain. It was as if Zhang Yuochen was wrapped in a giant white ball. Everything within the ball was under his control. Rise. When Zhang Yuochen raised his arm, a red copper lampstand 3 meters away flew up and floated delicately in the air. Slap. The lampstand abruptly fell to the ground. The flame went out and the oil inside spilled all over. His space domain then broke and disappeared. The space domain I can currently build is frail. I must keep practicing. I feel traces of the power of Thunderbolt in my space domain. Didn't my martial soul of Thunderbolt in the last life disappear? Zhang Yuochen held his space area again to watch it carefully and found small sparks of thunder and lightning in it. Just then, a mosquito broke into his domain. Flying towards him, he smiled. An idea came to his mind. Slap. A thunderbolt from the void space, like a white sword, struck the mosquito into ashes. Zhang Yuochen had discovered an amazing feature. As long as he was in the domain, his eyesight and hearing were enhanced several times. He could clearly see the fine scales on mosquitoes' wings and he could audibly hear the most subtle of winds. Was this the beauty of space domain? As the mystery of time and space recorded, space domain is truly excellent. I just discovered 10% of its beauty. Zhang Yuochen wanted to keep practicing and discover more. However, he would have to leave the palace to go to the school of the martial market tomorrow. He did not know when he would return again, so he wanted to visit Concubine Lin before he left. Since he showed a powerful gift for the martial arts, Concubine Lin's status in the palace was on a steady rise. More and more maidservants and eunuchs served her, making Jade Palace a livelier place. Chen, I hear the school of the martial market is located at Omen Ridge where savage beasts run wild. It's a dangerous place. You must be careful. Concubine Lin took his hand in hers, not wanting him to go. But she knew that as children grew up, sooner or later, they would leave the arms of their parents and independently face challenges in the outside world. Zhang Yuochen laughed. Mother, you think too much. The school is on the outskirts of Omen Ridge. It's not dangerous. Besides, savage beasts dare not attack the school where have many masters. Concubine Lin nodded. I heard you and Ningshan became enemies. Ah, after all, she's your cousin. You're supposed to spare her life no matter her mistakes in the future. Zhang Yuochen's expression turned grim. Did the head of the Lin family ask you to tell me this? After consuming spiritual brawn, Concubine Lin had become more beautiful and youthful. She said in a soft voice, Chen, your grandfather cares about you. But there are many things that he's forced to do that are out of his will. Zhang Yuochen nodded. Mother, I promise you I'll never touch the Lin family if they don't bother me again. Concubine Lin nodded slowly. She was proud of her son as he had truly grown up. The school of the martial market would be a bigger world for him. If he achieved great things in the school, those people who undermined them would have nothing more to criticize. Zhang Yuochen then gave her mother 1,000 spiritual crystals, asking her to send them to Lin Mansion. 1,000 spiritual crystal was equal to 1 million silver coins. He did because he knew Concubine Lin had deep attachments to the Lin family. It would mend their relationship if she was the one who sent over the money. If that family still did not change their attitudes, forcing him to be their enemies, he would not show any mercy. When dawn broke the next day, Zhang Yuochen got on the roan antelope vintage carriage under the protection of royal guards. Ninth Commandery Princess stood on top of the steps. Her body was slender and beautiful. Ninth brother, I'll practice and reach the Black Realm soon. At that time, I'll also go to the school of the martial market. Sitting on the antelope horse, Zhang Yuochen laughed. Ninth sister, I'll wait for your arrival. Zhang Yuochen then left the palace under the protection of General Gan Li and 100 royal guards, embarking on a new journey.